Okay, Mr. Pete, you go right ahead, buddy.
Okay, last week we looked at Daniel chapter 2, where we saw that Daniel told King Nebuchadnezzar what his dream was and the interpretation of that dream. And the interpretation of the dream was that there would be 4 Gentile forms of government, or 4 Gentile empires in the last days. He was told that the first one was the Babylonian Empire, and we know from history that the next 3 are the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the empire that we live in today. And the empire we live in today was started, remember, with the Roman Empire. Today we're going to look at Daniel chapter 7 and 2 passages in Revelation, chapters 13 and 17. And in chapter 7 of Daniel, he gives us a little more detail about the 4 empires. And in the Revelation chapters, we even get further detail, particularly about the generation that we live in today, the 4th Gentile Empire. Then it gives us some detail about the Messianic kingdom. Interestingly, and I've said this several times, the Old Testament prophets never saw the eternal order. They didn't see past the Messianic kingdom. And in fact, the Old Testament prophets never saw the church age, which is interesting to me. So if you will, turn to Daniel chapter 7, and let's look at what is going on in this entire chapter. After giving us the time and location, well first in chapter 7, Daniel describes 4 visions that he had. And in verse 1, he gives us the time and location of the visions. And then in verse 2 through 6, he tells us the first vision. Now keep in mind that Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream was around 600 BC. And now these visions in chapter 7 occur around 45 or 50 years later. And they occur in the reign of Belshazzar. And Daniel has these dreams in his bed. Look at the first verse of chapter 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. And then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matter. Now he's fixing to tell us what these visions were. There were 4 of them. Now, verse 1 has something else that's interesting in it. It sounds like Daniel is not writing this. He has told one of his friends or someone else these visions, and they are writing it down, because it says, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed, and then it was written down. But it sounds like Daniel may not have written this entire book. But what we know is this entire book is of God. It is the Word of God given to us and written down by either Daniel or someone else. Now Daniel in verses 2 through 6 tell us his first vision. Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Now we'll go to my notes a little bit, and let's talk about what is being said there. If I can get to the right page. After giving us the time and location, he tells us this this vision, and he starts by saying, the sea is troubled by the four winds. Now, the four winds, that's the same number as the four Gentile nations or empires that we saw in Daniel 2. And they are troubled by four winds from heaven. These winds are of God. The Mediterranean Sea, we know, represents the Gentile people. We can go to Revelation 17, verse 15, and see that that's what this sea represents. Look at Revelation chapter 17, verse 15, where it says, and he saith unto me, now this is the Apostle John writing here, he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, now John has just seen the Mediterranean Sea, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples, and multitudes, and nations, and tongues. When it talks about nations in the Bible, it's talking about Gentile nations. So what John is told there, the Mediterranean Sea, the waters of the sea, represent the Gentile people, or the Gentile nations, the non-Jewish people. And he goes on to say, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. Suddenly four beasts arise from the sea, each one different from the other, and all four are Gentile, and all four arise out of the Mediterranean Sea. The first beast, let's look at the next verse. The first one was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand up on the feet as a man, and the man's heart was given to it. Now, what that's saying is that this lion-like beast with eagle's wings, which represents the Babylonian Empire, is given the right to rule the world. And the latter part of this verse is probably referencing back to the time when Nebuchadnezzar lost control of Babylon, and he became like a wild animal, and he was out in the fields eating grass, and the dew would fall on him, and he was out there until he recognized that Daniel's God had the power to appoint kings and to dethrone kings. And once he recognized that power, he was restored as king of Babylon, and he ruled Babylon for a few more years until it was overthrown by the Medes and the Persians. And so that is the first beast that he sees. The second beast, and behold another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So this second beast is bear-like, representing the Medo-Persian Empire. It was raised up on one side, or we might say it was lopsided. The reason for that is the Medes and the Persians, while they formed a coalition to overthrow the Babylonians, it was not an equal coalition. The Persians were much stronger than the... Is this thing possible? The Persians were much stronger than the Medes. If you recall, Cyrus the Great was a very powerful king in Persia, and Darius was not as powerful. So when they formed this coalition, they were unequal partners, and the Bible refers to them as being like a bear raised up on one side, or stronger on one side of the coalition than on the other side of the coalition. the Persians were by far the dominant force. 3 ribs in its mouth represent the 3 kingdoms conquered by the Medo-Persians: Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt. When they overthrew Babylon and captured Egypt and Lydia, they had taken in much of the entire world. Now, the Babylonian Empire was given the right by God to take over the whole world. They didn't do that. The Medes and Persians were given that right, and they didn't do that. The reason the Babylonians didn't do it is the lust of conquest gave way to the lust of culture building. Think about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Think about the Ishtar Gate. All the beauty and all the culture that was developed in the late stages of the Babylonian Empire, but they became weaker because they were not in battle all the time, and they were overthrown by the Medes and the Persians, which is this bear-like beast. And now look, and behold, another beast. Verse 6. After this, I beheld another beast, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast also had 4 heads. Now that's something different. That's something new. This was not mentioned in Daniel 2. This beast has 4 heads. It's leopard-like, but it has 4 heads. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Now this implies that Alexander the Great, or the Greeks, or the Hellenistic people, had a right, or had the permission by God to capture the whole world. They didn't do that. Alexander the Great went as far east as the border of India, but when he got there, his generals said, "We've been in battle too long. We're not going to go into India," even though Alexander the Great wanted to. They didn't go to India. They turned back, went back to Greece. Alexander the Great died, and his kingdom was divided among the 4 generals that wouldn't go into India with him to capture the whole world. So keep in mind now, 2 of these empires have been given the right to capture the whole world, but neither did. One of them wasn't given the right. And then after this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, I'm going to forget, chapter 8 is where we'll go. I considered, let me back up, to the middle of verse 7. I didn't finish verse 7 before I went to the leopard. 7 says, after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong. Okay, this is the right verse. The leopard was Alexander the Great. He didn't take the whole world. Now he's in verse 7, and this is the 2nd vision. Verse 6 ends the first vision. He saw three beasts in the first vision. Now he's going to tell us what he sees in the 2nd vision, starting in verse 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now, we just a minute ago introduced 4 heads. We're going to talk about that later. Now he's introduced 10 horns. This 4th beast has 10 horns. If you remember, the 4th beast in Daniel 2 was the empire that we live in today, and it started with a unified government, which was Rome. And then it divided into 2 divisions, an east-west balance of power, which is where we live today. We live in this 4th empire, in the 2nd stage of that empire, which is the east-west balance of power, recall. Now, he introduces in this 4th beast 10 horns. he skips right over the two-division stage of the fourth Gentile empire and goes straight to 10 divisions in this empire. It starts with Rome, a unified start to this empire, and Daniel 7 skips right to a 10-division stage of the fourth empire. We're going to see what that means in a little bit, but basically what it says is, at some point in time, this world is going to be divided into 10 divisions, and then we will see what happens when that 10-division stage is reached. The 10-division stage is not mentioned in Daniel chapter 2. Did we give out chart 2 last week?
This one?
We just gave out one last week, the first one.
I think we just gave out the first one. Okay, does everybody have the first chart?
I need that one.
Okay? Let me see if I still got some. I don't think I have.
It's that one, I don't know if we have extra.
Has somebody got one that they can see?
I can make a copy.
We got two of the other ones. We don't have
Have you got two? Have y'all got two? Have y'all got two? Have you got both of them?
She's got one.
Make a copy.
You got one?
I
Okay.
can
I don't know if it's dry area here or what, but
I didn't want that.
we don't, that's all we all have.
looking at this chart, they help you follow along a little bit.
No.
If you look at it, let me get my copy of it. On the left side, you see what Daniel 2 shows us. It shows us the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Hellenistic or Greek Empire, and then the Fourth Empire. Now, Daniel 7 shows us the Babylonian Empire in the form of a lion, the Medo-Persian Empire in the form of a bear that's raised up on one side, and the Hellenistic Empire, which is a leopard. And it shows us this leopard in two stages, the united stage and a four-division stage, where the four generals split up the kingdom of Alexander after he dies. And then it goes to the Fourth Empire, where both of them show a united stage, which is the Roman Empire. And Daniel 2 shows us a two-division stage of the Fourth Empire, which is the east-west balance of power. But Daniel 7 does not show that stage. It goes straight to a one-world government stage, and then a 10-division stage. So that's where we just got to in verse 7. Now let's go back and read that while you're looking at this chart to be a little bit clearer. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast. And look, it doesn't say what kind of beast it is. It just says it's a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. It is a unified government, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of its feet, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. It was powerful enough to destroy all the other empires in existence at the time. And it had 10 horns. I consider now, Daniel is seeing all this stuff, but remember, he's writing this 550 years before Christ. 550 years BC. He had no clue what's going to happen. But everything he was writing happened exactly the way he wrote it. up until today, and it is still happening exactly right like he wrote it today. We're in the two-division stage of this fourth Gentile empire. 3 of them have arisen and fallen. That's amazing that Daniel was given this information and he had no way of knowing what was going to happen. If you want proof of this book, that right there to me says it all. This had to be the Word of God being transmitted by the Holy Spirit to Daniel. He couldn't see all of this. And that's why in chapter 12, verse 4, God told Daniel, seal this book up until the end days. Because at the end days, we can look at history and see that everything he wrote down is happening exactly like he said. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. Now, these 10 horns represent 10 divisions of the government that we are going to see happen if we're alive. It is going to happen in the future. And among these 10 horns rises up a little horn. We're going to find out from the Revelation chapters what these horns and all these heads are when we get to Revelation. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. And we're going to find out later what these great things were. They were boasting and blasphemy against God. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was like white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels are burning fire. Now, you will see in the Bible several times where the throne of God has wheels like fire, and it belches out fire as this throne moves around. That's in several places in the Bible, and you will see that as you read through here. Now, what we're talking about here is the Messianic kingdom. After the 4 Gentile empires arise and fall, the Messianic kingdom will be set up, and that kingdom will last forever and forever and forever. And then he goes on to say, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him. Thousands of angels ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and the judgment was set, and the books were opened. And the Messianic kingdom is going to be set up. Christ is going to reign on earth. The saints, Israel, is going to be back in control of Jerusalem. Remember, the time of the Gentiles lasts from the Babylonian Empire until the second coming. And during that period of time, the times of Gentiles is referred to as the time when Gentiles have Jerusalem under control.
Mr. Pete, try pulling it away from your mouth a little bit.
What happened? Somebody that sings up here all the time would know. That help? Okay. Thanks. I beheld then, because a voice of the great words which the horn spoke. A fire stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and the judgment was set, and the books were opened. Somebody doesn't want me to.
I think it's the cord on your. Is that tucked in? Maybe just. Ben, you think that's what it is the cord on the?
I have
on
an
the
extra
back?
cord.
Okay.
You can go ahead and use the handheld. Let me take a look at that. I'll replace the cord. Go ahead. No, okay, now, here we go. It was green and then. Check one.
You have to, here, you have to turn it on over here by the drums.
It's your, you're saying you could choose sketch.
Or they like this type of one, they have it farmer and I used to think about it.
Pink, check.
Can y'all hear me?
There you go. There it is.
Okay, everybody hear that now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, let me just catch up with my notes here. So having described these four visions, Daniel described these four visions for us, which is essentially the same overview of the four Gentile empires as found in Daniel 2. He now gives us the interpretation in verses 15 through 27 of all the things that are going on here. So let's go to verse 15. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. Now listen to that. Daniel just heard all these, or just saw all these visions, and they're troubling him. He can't understand what's going on, but he's going to write them down. He's going to pass them on to us. And I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things that I saw. These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. Now, these are human. They rise out of the earth. They're not divine. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. So these four beasts arise. They are overthrown. And the Messianic kingdom is set up. And Christ rules that kingdom. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, break in pieces, and stamp the residue with his feet. This fourth generation is going to take over all the world. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other horn which came up, and before whom 3 fell, there are going to be 10 divisions. The Antichrist is going to arise. He's the little horn, the 11th horn. He's going to kill 3 of the kings, 3 of the horns. He's going to uproot them. And he is going to become the 8th horn. And he is going to rule the world. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse. Go back to 20. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake with very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn, the little horn, made war with the saints, made war with Israel. The saints, he's talking about here, it's the nation of Israel, and he prevailed against them until the Ancient of Days came, And judgment was given, and the saints of the Most High, Israel, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. At some point, Christ is going to come back. He's going to set up the Messianic kingdom. It is like the kingdom that the Jews have been expecting forever, the Messianic kingdom. But it's going to also have Gentiles in it, by the way. And thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all the kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. Now there's where Daniel introduces the fact that there will be a one world government, a government over the whole world, and that government will be divided into the 10 kingdoms represented by the 10 horns. The Antichrist will arise. He will be the 11th horn. He will kill 3 of the kings or kingdoms or presidents or whatever they're called. He will kill them. He will be the 8th horn, and he will rule for a time. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of times. In other words, in the second half of the tribulation period, Antichrist is going to rule for 42 months, or 3.5 years. Everybody with me so far?
Yes, sir.
I told you, Daniel is a complex book until you understand what he's talking about here. And there's another passage that we'll look at in Daniel about the 77s, which will clarify a lot of what's going on in the last days. The 2 things we want to get to before we talk about the events. I apologize. Before we talk about the order of the events that occur in the last days, and it's these passages about the Gentiles and their being in control of Jerusalem, and the 77s that Daniel talks about, which will lay out the time frame of the 490 years that we need to understand out of one passage of Daniel. Now back here, and the Antichrist shall speak great words against the Most High. Now this is getting clearer. He's going to speak blasphemy against God. He's going to set himself up as God. He is going to claim to be God. He is going to be worshipped by the world as God. He's going to sit himself in the Holy of Holies in the next temple to be built. And he will claim to be God. And many people will accept him as God because he will be given the power to perform miracles and to do signs like were done during the period when Christ was on earth. Antichrist, he will be worshipped by many. He shall speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints. He will kill many of the people of Israel. Shall wear out the saints of the Most High and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. That always means 3.5 years. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints. when Christ sets up the Messianic kingdom, there'll be two divisions. The government form will be two divisions. One division of the Jews, the Israel, the people of Israel. And I believe that will be headed by resurrected David. Christ will be preeminent, the king of the Messianic kingdom, and there will be a Gentile division headed up by the 12 elders of the church. We'll see some of that in Revelation. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under